Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for convening this important markup. As you know, every year, countless homicides leave mothers and fathers without children, spouses widowed, and sons and daughters without parents. As we enter the holiday season, they're even more reminded of the emptiness in their homes. These senseless crimes spare no one, whether it's the unfortunate victim or the family member or loved one who is left behind to cope with lasting shock, turmoil, and grief. Far too many individuals experience prolonged helplessness as they seek closure when losing a loved one to a homicide. After all, murder never discriminates, nor does it prioritize. Instead, homicides leave family members and loved ones to somehow rebuild their lives one day at a time. And no legislation can reverse the destruction that results from such a heinous crime. It is still incumbent upon us to pass laws that expand justice and demand accountability. Special care is especially needed for cold case crimes. The FBI Uniform Crime Report estimates that 250,000 homicide cases are currently unsolved. The number of unsolved cases eventually attain cold case status continues to increase each year by an average of 6,000. And according to a Council on Criminal Justice FBI reports, unsolved murder cases hit a new high in 2020, with clearance rates falling well below 50%. As a former prosecutor, I saw firsthand the challenges of investigations running cold, without readily identifiable suspects and where all probative leads were exhausted. Unsolved cases drain resources, resulting in higher burdens on law enforcement agencies across the board. The good news is that today, this committee will take an important step towards administering justice and accountability for families and loved ones of homicide victims. My legislation with Representative Mike McCall from Texas, the Bipartisan Homicide Victims Families' Rights Act, would empower family members and loved ones to continually work with law enforcement to seek justice once a homicide investigation achieves cold case status. This legislation would require reviews and reinvestigations of homicide files upon request of a loved one or family member 3 years after a case goes cold. This would include a complete re-examination of the file and accompanying evidence, new or renewed interviews with potential subjects and witnesses, and other methods to possibly find missteps. Improvements in technology, resources, and evidence-based techniques will better equip law enforcement agencies with the tools they need to review files under a novel lens, one that would assist in identifying new leads and witnesses to solve crimes and obtain justice that victims' families and loved ones so rightfully deserve. This legislation makes a promise that no victim will ever be forgotten. It also provides law enforcement with additional disaggregated and detailed information about cold case homicides that will assist agencies across state lines to help triangulate homicide trends and identify new leads. The ranking member pointed out that most homicides and most cold cases are local in jurisdiction, and he's correct. It's the hope, though, that by having a model federal law where there still are unsolved federal cold cases, that we could inspire states across the country to adopt their own homicide victims' Bill of Rights that would ensure the reopening of cold cases. Mr. Chairman, I also want to thank my co-author, Mr. McCall, for his dedication to bringing justice for victims of unsolved homicides. He's also a former prosecutor, and his unique perspective, having served as a prosecutor with the Department of Justice, brought with him a wealth of knowledge on criminal investigations at both the state and federal level. I ask, Mr. Chairman, that we receive unanimous consent to enter into the record a statement of support of our legislation by the gentleman from Texas, Mr. McCall.
Without objection.
I also wish to thank former Assistant United States Attorney in the District of Columbia, Glenn Kirshner, who worked with my office after his years of working as a prosecutor and detailing to us the pain for so many families who see their cases of their loved one go unsolved. Glenn worked with us for years to write this legislation and make sure that no victim is forgotten. We also seek to enter into the record with unanimous consent a National Victims Organization Group Coalition letter of support, individual letters of support from the American Investigative Society of Cold Cases, Parents of Murdered Children, Inc., and Murder Accountability Project, and individual letters of support from the Association of Prosecuting Attorneys and the Federal Law Enforcement Officers Association.
Without objection.
Thank you again, Mr. Chairman, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Chairman.